Welcome to Stitching Tales, a podcast about all things sewing and what it's really like to run a sewing business, with your host Malena Hjerpe of Hazelhen Patterns and Johanna Lundström of The Last Stitch. Hey Malena!
Hi Johanna! How are you today?
I am fine. It's spring here in Sweden, or I should say in Sweden, in the southern part of Sweden, because that's where I live.
We have spring as well here, but it's full spring 1. We will have winter a couple of times before we can really have the proper spring.
So you have twice the amount of seasons basically in the northern part of Sweden, like
Yeah.
Spring 1,
we have
spring 2.
Spring, winter, when it's like so sunny, so beautiful, but still full on snow and cold. So it's impossible to get rest basically in this era of year. It's muddy.
Yeah.
Very much muddy at the moment.
It's the same. Here it's been warmer but raining, so that's the challenge, and cold winds as well. So even though we have plus degrees in terms of Celsius, it's still kind of like, I wouldn't say it's nice, but at least we're starting to see, I think, is it called the buds on trees as well, where the leaves are about to crack open, because now we can start to see those, and also the first spring flowers has come up in. So that's really nice.
We are not there yet. I am so longing for that. It's hopefully spring will come this year as well.
Yeah, hopefully, yes. Because we have, as we talked about previously, we had a relatively cold winter here in Sweden this year, so we definitely had to get a lot of use on our wool and other warm thermal clothes. But today we're going to talk about not spring, but something else that starts with an S, right?
Yes, we are going to talk about sleeves.
Yes. Which
one is your favorite sleeve?
Well, I am partial to the puff sleeve. I feel it's almost a cliche at this point, but when I look back, because I've been sewing blogging for almost 20 years, and when I would look back, it's clear that it's one concept. It doesn't really matter if it's trendy or not. I don't know. Maybe it's because I like the volume. So not like a crazy puff, but definitely a puff sleeve. So it's no coincidence that my girly top, one of my sewing patterns, has puff sleeves as well, and my next pattern might also come with a puff sleeve version and a regular sleeve as well, because I do understand that not everyone loves a puff sleeve. So what's your favorite, Malena?
To be honest, sleeves are a little bit like, I don't know, not my favorite thing. I mean, I like them to be there, but no, I am not a fan of puff sleeves. I mean, on other people it looks nice. It's not that. But it's just, I think I have something with my shoulders. Like, I can't have like broad shoulder styles, like big huge shoulder pads, crazy puff sleeves or anything. I feel dressed up then. It's a little bit same thing for me with, I can have so much makeup on my eyes, but even a lip gloss, and I feel like I am dressing out. Like, I can't have any lipstick, any lip gloss, nothing. It's the same thing with sleeves for me. Like, I can't really have any. I don't want to have anything on my shoulder. I don't know why. But it's just like a personal preferences on me. On anyone else, it's like, yeah, no problem. Wear what you want, and it could be really beautiful. So I would say just a regular set-in sleeve. That's my favorite. As a pattern maker, that is definitely what I prefer. Actually, puff sleeves are a little bit easier to construct, because then you have a little bit of a wiggle room with how much gatherings you have. But my absolute hate when it comes to construction is raglan. That is my nemesis. I can't figure it out. It's no, we are still not cooperating. So definitely a set-in sleeve. And when I say set-in sleeve, that is like the technical term for, just a regular sleeve. You have a front piece, back piece, and then a regular sleeve, like nothing weird. So that is a set-in sleeve. But yeah, less is more, definitely, for me when it comes to sleeves.
So no crazy statement sleeves for you. You keep it simple and plain. I'm really curious from your background as a professional, what are the kind of challenges that it comes to sleeve and constructing patterns? Because can I imagine sleeves might cause some issues when it comes to fitting and construction?
Yeah, and I think the most difficult part is actually to know where is the issue? Is it the actual sleeve, or is it the armhole? And when everything is sewn together and you just wear it, it can be really tricky to know which one is causing which issue. So that is my first tip of the day. If you have some fitting issues in your like armhole sleeve area, it could actually, well, you don't know, is it the armhole or is it the sleeve? It's not so visible all the time. So remove the sleeve and start with the armhole and see how is the armhole fitting without any sleeve. Because then it's so much easier to see, is the armhole too big, too small, too weird, like balanced weirdly. It's so much easier to tell when the sleeve is off. And if you find no, armhole is fine, it's the sleeve, well then you can start adjusting the sleeve instead. So you kind of need to know where is actually what is the issue, is where is the fitting problem.
Yeah, that's a very good tip, because I too have noticed that. And also well drafted pattern, the sleeve is it's also when something is a little bit off with the sleeve, it becomes kind of like an eyesore in a way. So that's one of the things that it kind of draws the attention. That's probably one, as you say, the puff sleeve is so forgiving because it kind of hides, or more or less so to say, it embraces common issues such as like gathers, or maybe something is a little bit too tight somewhere, or the way it hangs. When you have a regular satin sleeve, all those things becomes very visible. So as you say, you have more room, literally, for errors when doing a puff sleeve.
Because no, exactly, because if you have a puff sleeve, then it is fine if the sleeve is a little bit too big for you, well then it just gives a bigger volume effect. But if you usually need to do a full bicep adjustment while having a puff sleeve, then great, then you get more ease on the garment. So then you maybe want to add even more. But yeah, it's a little bit more forgiving since it's not so, everything that is closely fitted, you have less wiggle room basically to, the fit needs to be more spot on, I would say.
And also, because we talked about a couple of different sleeve style here, raglan and satin sleeves. So what would you say are the basic styles that all the other versions derive from, so to speak, when it comes to sleeves?
I think regular satin sleeve is the base. Basic slope or basic patterns that you start from are always satin sleeve, and then you can draft a raglan from that. But you need to do quite a lot of adjustments. Just imagine your shoulder, what a big 3D shape that is. And when you have a raglan, you basically remove the shoulder seam and need to close that. And so it is quite a lot of different construction when it comes to raglan. But I think it easier to have a satin sleeve, because then you have a bodice that holds it own. And then you can just add on a sleeve, and you can play a lot with a regular satin sleeve, like have it with no gatherings, with a lot of gatherings, drapings, pleats. Like it's more common that you do any design to it for the satin sleeve. Raglan, is more of a sporty, usually vibe to it. You don't see that many different types of design, I would say, on raglan sleeve. Sure, the placement, if the seams are placed high or low, and on some garment I've seen like they added pleats on the raglan sleeve, but otherwise I feel the raglan is not that much variations to it. Sure, the amount of ease on the garment changes, and of course that will change the raglan sleeve as well, but usually there are a lot more variations on the set-in sleeve.
I'm also curious about those extended sleeves, for instance dolman sleeves, or what is on a traditional kimono. I think there are lots of different versions where you basically extend. There is no shoulder or armhole seam, and it's basically just one long sleeve. In what categories do they belong? Is that a separate category? Is it a raglan, or what do you call that?
I don't know.
I put you on the spot, sorry.
No, but I've never, I don't think we have a specific category for that one. I mean, yeah, you call it kimono sleeves, but I mean, biggest air quotes here, it's just a reference visual. This has been a whole discussion before in the sewing community about cultural appropriation, about the word kimono, because it is usually when you say kimono sleeve, it has nothing at all to do with the kimono. Usually it is called a bat wing or balmain sleeve, as you said. So those names are usually a bit more proper describing, but then it's basically, you don't have a separate separate sleeve. The shoulder seam is just continuing, and then obviously the sleeve can be wide, narrow at the wrist, depending on what kind of design you have. But then you have, of course, a lot of volume, and it's a little bit usually oversized at the bodice area, because you will have a lot of extra sleeve there. And here it's a little bit easier to fit those, because again, you can't have them properly super according to your body. It is meant to be a little bit oversized and drapey, and drapey fabrics usually work really well with these kind of silhouettes. But yeah, no, I don't think there is a specific name for that term, category. Yeah,
because I thought about that, because as you say, it's more of a volume thing. It's more of a look. So that also means that you cannot obsess over the fit as much, because there aren't really any variables you can control. For instance, if you're doing a dolman sleeve, you might add a gusset underneath just to get some easier movement and shape, but that's probably the only thing you can really do, basically, or maybe add a dart up here as well. But if we go back to set-in sleeves now, one thing that I am kind of don't know the answer, but I know that you know, because when we're sewing a sleeve in a woven, for instance, if you're sewing a shirt or a jacket, like a tailor jacket, the length, the seam line of the sleeve cap is always longer than the circumference of the armhole. So that means that you have to shrink in some extra fabric when you're attaching. And why is that? Why do we have to have that? Or why is it common, at least?
Yeah, and this is the opposite from knitted t-shirts. Then the sleeve is smaller compared to the armhole, and here on the woven it is bigger, and it is to create a little bit of not a puff, but a little bit of a 3D shape, basically, on the sleeve cap. Because if you have a shirt, for example, and it is quite fitted, you don't want the armhole and the shoulder seam to be too far out, because then it will restrict your movement. If it's too wide in the front, it will restrain when you're pulling your arms forward. It will be too much fabric at the front armhole. So there is a sweet spot. It can't be too tight, because then you can't move, but if it's too big, then it's actually also difficult to move. So that seam is gonna be a little bit inside your arm placement, basically. But then to add on a flat sleeve that doesn't have any, if it would have zero ease or anything, it will quite flat, and it might be too tight then. So then you have a little bit of ease, extra length to the sleeve cap, It shouldn't be gatherings, then it's like too much. And it depends a little bit on the fabric here, how much ease you can actually have. But you do it in the same way when you sew it as if you have like a puff sleeve. So you stitch 2 rows straight stitches, and then you pull it together, not to create gatherings, but just so it gets shaped a little bit at the top, evenly shaped, and then when you sew it, after you press it, you can't really see it. It just looks natural. It shouldn't create like a puff. But here again, it really depends on the fabric also. Like a really crisp poplin shirt fabric, then you can't have that much ease there, because it will create every little gathering will create like it will look like gatherings or small pleats then, so that won't be nice. But for example, a wool fabric, that will take you can have quite a lot of ease there before it even starts to look like gatherings. So it really depends. It depends on the fabric. But long story short, it is basically so it will be more comfortable for you to fit in your arms, basically. Otherwise, it might be too tight and difficult to move. So it's a comfort thing, and also like mimic the body shape, basically.
So I guess a goal of your construction pattern is to add as little ease as possible and still get those benefits, because if you add too much ease, you will see those puckers, especially depending on the fabric as well. So I guess there's a sweet spot when you're constructing those kind of patterns, because you definitely want to make it just right. And I have definitely had instances, I think especially with more vintage sewing patterns, that they had a pretty excessive amount of ease at the top of the sleeve cap. So to me, at least with the sewing skills that I have, I've been unable to fully enclose all those extra fabrics. So I've actually started on some of all the sewing patterns that I've had actually reduced some of the ease, which we also show in our book Fit for Knits as well, because as Malena just briefly mentioned, we're going to talk more about it's the reverse when it comes to a lot of knit sewing patterns, but it's definitely tricky. So I would say that if you have too much, if you still struggle, then you've done all the right way of easing. You can actually try and see if you can reduce some of that extra ease, because I think it's unnecessary, because I've seen patterns where you have to like ease in almost like 2 inches, and of course it's a wool jacket.
Yeah, that's a lot.
It's been crazy. Yeah, it's impossible. And also, as you said, with the poplin, even I've seen really like nicely well-made dress shirts in stores from like more higher end brands, and you can still see slight puckers at the along the shoulder, which kind of tells how difficult it is even in a professional setting to get rid of all those. And I think you get a little bit like overly, you get almost a little bit OCD or a little bit extra sensitive as a sewist as well, because I honestly think that most people I know would never be bothered by things like that, but I see it. So for instance, if I see a jacket ready to wear and I see those like clear puckers where they're not supposed to be, I'm like, I don't know, I think if you pay that much I would expect to have a flat.
Yeah, so, no, definitely. But it also depends a little bit on the sleeve design, I would say, how much ease there should and should not be. For example, if you have a very high sleeve cap, high sleeve hand, then the bicep will be quite tight. Then you need to have a little bit more ease, I would say, because you need all the fabric for movement. But if it's a quite low sleeve cap and the sleeve is like more standing out a little bit, then it's not needed with as much ease, because then the bicep is automatically wider since the sleeve cap is lower. So it also depends a little bit on the sleeve design, I would say, how much you actually need. And for example, on the shirt that I'm wearing right now, which has a very noisy fabric, sorry for that, I'm like trying to find here you can see it's a little bit dropped shoulder here, not so much but a little bit, so then you don't need that much ease either. And if you have like a really proper dropped shoulder that goes basically to your, I don't know, bicep level almost, then I would say you basically don't need any ease because it's not placed on your top of your shoulder anymore. So it really depends. Like there is not a set rule. And again, as I said, also depends on the fabric a little bit, how much you need. And if it's a little bit stretch in the fabric, then you are also less sensitive to actually needing it. So there is no strict answer to this, unfortunately. It all depends.
There's no magic number of ease that we could give all our lovely listeners.
No, and if it's a lot of ease and you need it, if you think a little bit like 50s tight-fitted, then yeah, you might need quite a lot to be able to move your arms. But then you can also spread out these. It just doesn't have to be on top of the shoulder. Like it basically could be almost like half the sleeve cap height. You can start and continue all the way from the front to the back and spread out the gathering. So you also get like really, before you attach the sleeve, you see like it gets a 3D shape that mimics the arms, upper arms basically. So it really, it depends. And I think I have really little knowledge when it comes to like suits, jackets, men's tailoring basically. Then I think they both have, at the top of the cap, they have like plus ease on the shoulder, on the sleeve, that should be gathered. But at the bottom of the armhole on the sleeve, they have negative ease on the shoulder. So that should be a little bit stretched out then. So it's really, but then we are talking about wool fabric, like, you know, shapes really well with steam and ironing, so pressing. So they are, then it's, you have that both. And also on, for example, again, men's tailoring, usually the shoulder seam, the back shoulder seam is longer compared to the front one. Usually you can also have a dart in the back to get you have a little bit of rounded shoulder shape, basically back shape, so you need a dart there. But if you don't want to have a visible dart, you can have the back shoulder seam a little bit longer, and again gather that to match the front shoulder. Not so much that you can see the gatherings, but just creates that a little bit of 3D volume. So it's really, it's like a 3D puzzle. Yeah,
I love those kind of intricate details, because that is so much also that goes into sewing this, because you have to have that those like motor skills to be able to shape that in an invisible way into because I've seen that when I looked at all the pattern books, they talk about this extra ease in the back shoulder seam. And the good thing about wool, as you mentioned, is that it's so malleable and shapeable. So I've done like a semi-tailored wool jacket, and it had plenty of extra ease, and I had no issues whatsoever, because when you work with it and you use the steam and all the things as you mentioned, it basically just shapes. It's a very modular fabric. It's totally opposite of like cotton twill or cotton poplin and those that are very unfriendly when it comes to shaping. So I love this kind of intricacies.
And this is the difference between tailoring, and you have like a tailor's hem that you like shape the fabric after, and mass production. This is the thing that gets lost in mass production, which I think we, as sewists, it's fun to know, and we can do this. Like, we can take the time and do these kind of things that will help with the fit and everything. So I think it's don't like the urge of being quickly done. No, take the advantage of doing like really proper tailoring on your garment. If you have the ability. So those small things that we can learn from tailors, proper tailors. I mentioned this before. I want to become a tailor, and I want to study it, so I know all these kind of things. I just feel like I have scratched the surface on these kind of things, and I'm just like, what don't I know that I don't know yet?
Yes, can't we just together manifest Malena's future in the costume department on some excellent opera, ballet, or theater? I can see that in your future. We need to like manifest that, and you can be like a tailor's apprentice. It would be fantastic. Yes. What an interesting podcast. I mean, mind blown. Yes, it's so intricate. I love watching that kind of documentaries as well, because you get so much. And of course, then when you're working with hand sewing as well, because then again you have so much more control compared to the rigidness of a machine stitching. So again, it just completely changes the way you're able to like put together fabric pieces. It's a beautiful thing. Back to the topic of sleeves.
Oh yes, sleeves. We were talking about sleeves.
Right. No, I thought we were talking about Malena. We're going to get Malena together. Do you have any openings? Malena, I don't know how open she is to travel, but let's make it happen. Well, it depends on where and why. No, but because we talked about now the amount of ease that you use on woven sleeves, but when it comes to knit sleeves, the situation is a bit different, right? And so could you explain the difference here between how you work with ease on, generally speaking, with woven sleeves versus how you think about ease when it comes to knit sleeves? I mean, fabric sewn with a more stretch.
Yeah, then it's the opposite, because then you have a fabric that has stretch in it, so you don't need the extra ease for your arms to actually have room in the sleeve. And also usually on knitted garments you don't have like a bust arch and things like that, so it is a little bit compromised on the fit. The armhole might be it might also be easily stretched out when you sew it, so then you actually want the sleeve cap to be smaller compared to your armhole, so it holds it a little bit in together, and the seam just looks nicer also when it's a little bit smaller. Like, it's not a lot. I would say like 1.5 centimeter, maximum 2 centimeters on the bigger sizes, but that's quite a lot, depending again also on the fabric a little bit. Like on a punta di Roma, then you don't have to have that much negative ease, to be honest. On like if you have a cardigan or something, you could actually do it more as a woven construction as well to get the nice silhouette. But on a like more stable cotton jersey, maybe 1 centimeter is fine. Negative ease then on the total sleeve head, and on a really soft rayon jersey, viscose that are super stretchy, then it's fine, like 2 centimeters negative ease on the sleeve cap. A little bit also depending on the size, like smaller sizes it's a less ease. Bigger sizes you have obviously longer
distance,
longer distances, so you can spread it out a little bit more evenly and easily, so then it could work with a little bit more negative ease. So again, here, not a straight answer.
It depends.
Yes, it depends. And on woven you'll always obviously want to have the plus ease at the top of the sleeve cap, but on jersey as well, it like, as long as the negative ease could actually be spread out through the whole armhole. Like, it doesn't have to be on a specific area. I have my experience, at least. You don't really even notice it when you sew it, as long as you are like matching up the notches and everything. You don't really notice it when you sew it, because the fabric they have different curves, armholes and sleeve heads, sleeve caps, so it kind of it gets lost a little bit when you sew it, but you do stretch out the sleeve cap a little bit when you sew it. So there's no need to like sew on woven. You want to sew 2 rows of gathering thread that you can create even ease. Here you don't need to do that on knitted fabric. You just make sure to line up the notches and it will work out fine, I would say.
Yeah, because as you say, because it's such a fluid fabric that when you're moving the sleeve around, and which brings us to another point as well of how to assemble the sleeves. Usually when you're sewing a knit garment, you assemble the sleeves on the flat, which means that after you've sewn the shoulder seams, then you attach the sleeve before you sew the side seam, so the armhole is still open. And that also, because of it's very easy to move a knit fabric around because it shapes, as we said, it stretches. So that makes assemble on the flat much easier compared to if you would do it on a woven fabric. But also trying to fit a knit into a circular hole, it's much more fiddly, and it's going to feel a little bit narrow, and you lose some of the control, I think, than you have when it comes to sewing on the flat. Would you agree with me on that thought?
Yeah. No, it's the opposite from woven. Then you sew the shoulder and side seam, and then you add on the sleeve. You sew the side seam on the sleeve as well, of course. But on knit, it's common practice that shoulder seam first, then you sew the armhole. It's just easier and quicker, also, to be honest. So it's a little bit easier with the knitted fabrics.
Yeah, and then of course you sew the side seam of the garment and the sleeves as in one continuous sequence. So you start from one point and then you sew all the way till the end of the garment. So that's also a very fast way. But speaking on the flat, if I'm not mistaken, do you know this? Because on shirts, for instance, where you talked about the on some like shirts that has a little bit maybe slightly drop shoulder or things like that, it has a less pronounced sleeve cap. It's a little bit flatter, and then I've seen some instructions showing that you also can sew that sleeve on the flat, right? So it all
yeah, I agree. It's because you don't have that same usually you don't have that much ease on it, and it's it mimics a little bit more knitted fabric then. So yeah, I haven't done that myself, but I can totally understand that that it works fine as well on woven.
Yeah. So what would you say when it comes to fitting? What would you say are some of the most common like fitting issues that you might encounter when you're fitting your sleeves and sewing your sleeves?
Yeah, I mean, movement is very important, obviously, because you are going to want to move your arms, and that could be an issue, I would say. And then it's, again, as I said, a little bit tricky to know if it is actually the armhole or if it's the sleeve. And also you can do it in different ways. For example, if you have a wider bicep but a lower sleeve cap, that's gonna create great movements for you, but it creates a little bit of drag lines when you have your arms down. But yeah, while if you have a more narrow bicep and a higher sleeve cap, it's gonna look really pretty on you when you just have your arms down. But as soon as you start to move around, it could be a little bit restricting. And this could also be when you're lifting your arms up and the whole garment gets lifted up. Usually that is because probably the armhole is a little bit too deep, so everything lifts up. But also that the sleeve cap is so high that everything gets lifted up when you do it. If you have a low sleeve cap and wide bicep, then you can move around a little bit more easily because of the constructions, basically. So that is a little bit depending also on what kind of style and what purpose you're gonna have on it. So you can pick a lane. Do you want low sleeve cap or high sleeve cap? Like what you want to do. Funny story, still a little bit dreadful. I remember the first time when we had I was working on a jersey department, and we've had the first dropped shoulder, like a really proper dropped shoulder and like a straight boxy bodice with like no shape to it, and then just a sleeve. And you know, it's like I haven't done this. I had never done that. I like this, that kind of silhouette was quite new then. I mean, I'm talking 15 years ago now. I have just had the like regular set-in sleeve. So I constructed the drop shoulder. The armhole is then pretty straight because it's basically the shoulder width is in the same line as the side seam. So it's a very boxy. But I still constructed the sleeve cap to be quite, you know, a regular sleeve
Curved,
cap, quite high. Yeah. And looked fine when it was on the dummy. But then when the fitting model was like trying to lift it up, she was like, something is going on here. It's like a conflict. And I was like, yeah, because I have dropped the shoulder, made the shoulder seam so much longer, but I still kept sleeve cap very high. It just it was a mess, hot mess. And then I had to do a little bit of research and see, it's like, okay, but how are these kind of garments actually constructed? And then it was like, oh, obviously, since you are moving the shoulder seam a lot further away from the bodice, that the sleeve cap needs to mimic that. So obviously that needs to be a lot shorter, and sometimes it's like almost even flat. Like there is the bicep is just going, it's straight across, it's no sleeve cap basically. But depending a little bit on how dropped shoulder you're gonna have. So yeah, my first take on the dropped sleeve or dropped shoulder was it wasn't pretty, let me tell you.
But it's also comforting way, because we all done like those like brain lapses, and it's very comforting to hear as you as well, as a professional, has also made those like rookie mistakes, so to speak. And I mean, we've all done this. It's like, and when you go back and look at it, how did my brain work when I did that? I mean, you're like, how did I like think that made sense? That's so interesting how your brain can be like. And then you look back, so why did I think that you need a sleeve cap at when you're not placing the sleeve at the high part of the shoulder or the sleeve? So yeah, that makes totally. I have probably done the same thing. You're just thinking, okay, I'll just extend everything. You don't really think about the consequences. And also, if this is a little bit abstract that we're talking about today, first of all, we're definitely gonna post some pictures, because in our book Fit for Knits, Malena shows exactly what she's talking about now, with the difference of sleeve cap height and the pros and cons of the different methods. So, for instance, if what are you most fine with, basically, to look good when you sit still, or to provide movements, and sometimes those are not mutually compatible. So you have really good illustration for that. So you definitely should check out our book Fit for Knits, and we're also going to post some images on that on our Instagram account, stitchingtalespod as well, so you can see basically what we are talking about. But yeah, because that was such a revelation for me when you talked about the sleeve cap and how that differed, because I've seen some styles have a flatter sleeve cap and some have higher, but hadn't really thought about the practical implications of so you have to pick your sleeve cap wisely, so to speak. That's the take home message here.
Yeah, and it depends a little bit also on your body shape and what I mean, obviously a lower sleeve cap is going to have wider bicep, and the opposite for a higher sleeve cap, you're going to have a smaller bicep measurement. So what's going to suit you more? And also I think like, as always, like, we should really take advantage of we don't have to follow a pattern like on everything. Like, you can, if you, for example, you want to have more ease at your sleeve, like you have bigger biceps measurements compared to the pattern has. I mean, you can add gatherings to your sleeve cap and make it into a puff sleeve. That's no problem. Like, you can do that. And there are a little bit like incorporating gatherings in the right places can actually be not just a design feature, but it can actually be a great fit adjustment for you, because you get in a lot of volume there in the gatherings. You get a lot of extra width of fabric, so take advantage of that. But if you're going to do it properly, just a little gatherings usually just looks like a mistake. So if you are going to have it like add on, usually a good ratio is like, if you have 10 centimeters, take it like make it 15 then, so you add on 50% fabric length, so you can measure a little bit, so you know, like, okay, 4 inches, then I want to, the extended width gatherings should be 6 inches. Am I mathing correctly now? It's like 1.5 times whatever original length you have.
Increase at least 50% of the area that should be gathered, I would say. And you can definitely go up to 100% without it being crazy gathers as well. If you move up to that, you're going to have lots and lots of volume. But I agree with you. There's definitely a sweet spot that you should not go under. It also depends on how long the area is gathered as well. But I try to,
what kind of fabric you have. Usually the thicker the fabric, like woven fabrics, for example, a twill, and you have 200% gatherings, it's gonna be a lot. Not the best fabric to gather either. But yeah, depending a little bit on the fabric. And I mean, obviously it's a visual effect. Like, do you want a lot? Add a lot, no problem. So don't be afraid to play around with this. It could be really beneficial. Absolutely.
And that brings me to another point, which because I'm always thinking about future sewing patterns in my head, even though I'm working on one right now as we're recording this episode. But I'm actually thinking now Malena is going to scream because she is the one drafting and grading the patterns for me. But in the future, I want to do a raglan situation.
Oh,
Malena's
joy.
rolling the eyes. But so
sell it to me, come on.
Yeah, okay. So I don't want to do like a regular one-piece raglan sleeve because as you hinted, and I can definitely testify, and I think everyone who's tried or wear raglan sleeve, you will have usually quite a lot of folds of fabrics going on situation because you don't have the regular seam, armhole seam. The fabric has to go somewhere basically, and that's usually in the front and the back. It kind of bounces, or you either get drag lines or vertical folds and things like that. But speaking about adding design elements, you can do so much with darts and seams on a raglan sleeve, and just adding a dart, for instance, on your raglan sleeve, that just improved the fit vastly. And of course you can also add seam the entire way. And if you look a lot of all the raglan sleeves patterns, and also if you look for an instance like a traditional like car coat and trench coat, you will see that the raglan sleeve is usually not a single piece, but it's actually 2 piece, and then it becomes a whole different thing. So that's both just like it adds some interest to the garment, but it also removes a lot of fitting issues. So I think definitely with the raglan sleeve, don't just settle for a one-piece one. I think it's very, and I love that kind of when you start to shape the raglan sleeve, you get a beautiful roundness around that shoulder area that you won't get with that flat raglan sleeve. So don't be afraid to experiment and adding seams to your raglan sleeve as well, especially.
I'm trying to find the pages now in our books Fits for Knit, when we actually, let me see if I can find the there. You can actually add dart really easily to the raglan. And then you can do this on both woven and knitted fabric. So then you keep the shape of the armhole, but you get a lot of volume for the sleeve or for the shoulder, basically. So it works same as a bust dart. If you have a fuller bust than a dart, you kind of need it. And the same thing with the shoulder. It's usually if you have stretchy fabric, it's fine, you get by anyway. But as soon as you have like less stretchy woven fabrics, then you definitely need something. Unless it's an oversized shirt or something, then you also, it's a little bit oversized fit silhouette anyway. So then it's fine without. But yeah, you can do a lot with a seam or a shoulder, and that's also, I mean, usually sleeves are in one piece, but I mean, you can add seams there as well. Like for example, on a suit, those have 2-piece sleeves that are like slightly shaped, like slightly bent, because usually you don't have your arms completely straight all the time, so it mimics the body a little bit. But you can also, I mean, regardless if it's knitted or woven, you can add seams, add shape to the pattern, also to add or reduce width. So don't be afraid to like play around with the pattern and design.
Yeah, very good. And also you could also of course add, because if you just have a nice top, for instance, that you really like, you can do so much. I highly recommend that you all invest, if you haven't already, like one good basic pattern drafting book, because then the whole world opens, because there, as you said, there's so many different ways of doing a sleeve. I mean, you can do sorry, I'm blanking now, but when you do, for instance, like a trumpet sleeve or a bell sleeve, where you slash and open the pattern, the straight sleeve pattern, then you just get this beautiful curve, and then you can have I love fluttery sleeve, I think it's also called, or butterfly sleeves and things like that. I mean, you have so many options to play around. So if you have a top, you don't have to buy another pattern if you just want to add that particular feature. And there are so many ways you can add width, and then you can gather them into a cuff at the end, for instance, as well. Then you get such a nice, and you can do that either using gathers or pleats like you would do on a shirt. So there are so many ways of just making a basic sleeve into something completely different. You could even do like 2 sleeves and basically 2 pieces, and then join them together, and then have like the separating at the end. I mean, there would be like butterfly wings or something like that. I mean, the sky is the limit. And also, I mean, just speaking of raglan sleeves, there are lots of different ways of shaping them. You can either have like a straight diagonal line, or you can have it a little bit curved. And there is a nice version as well where, I don't know what it's called in English, but it looks like a satin sleeve, but then almost at the top of the shoulder it extends and creates almost a yoke into the neckline.
I think it's called a saddle seam.
That's one of my favorite styles. I think it looks super cool, but I don't see many sewing patterns have it today. But usually, if you look at all the pattern books, they will have instructions on how to adapt your pattern for that. Yeah, I think it's a little bit more common to
have on like knitwear, heavy knitwear. Then it's a more common silhouette. But no, I haven't seen it either on like woven or jersey.
So the sky is the limit, and we're definitely we're gonna link to some pattern making books as well in this episode if you haven't already. I'm sure a lot of people are adventurous about the sleeves, but I definitely think we can do more, and you don't have to go crazy with the sleeve, but just a few adaptations, and you can completely change the garment. And so that's one of the fun things about pattern making. And also, if you do those a little bit more out there sleeves, then again fitting becomes less of an issue as well, because as we say, it's basically the regular set-in sleeve. That's probably the one that's going to cause you the most headache, and all the other styles are going to be like totally fine, but they will look super cool and make your garment much more unique. So go crazy with the sleeves.
Yeah, and they are really like different. I mean, so big variations of, if you Google like sleeve designs, and everything has their own specific name that I can't even remember top of my head, but yeah, it's so many different types of volumes and play on volumes and everything. So it's really, yeah, you can have a lot of fun with the sleeves and play around with it.
Yeah, definitely don't be afraid of sleeves, and if you do have fitting issues, we definitely recommend that you just, as Malena says, starts analyzing in the right manner. And you can of course check out book Fit for Knits as well. We show how to do that as well, especially on knit, but it's also applicable to woven fabrics as well. So any final...
One thing I see a question like, how do you know the sleeve head, like front and back?
Right, that's a good question.
Yeah, I think we have talked about this before in some episodes, but just to, if you haven't written it down or you forgot like which one is the front and which one is the back. First of all, on some jersey patterns, they have been if there is no like left or right side, it's the same look. That is a little bit of a compromise since the fabric is stretchy. You get by with having the same sleeve head cap shape on front and back. I don't think so. I don't do that. No, it also depends a little bit on the style. On a dropped shoulder, sure, you can get by with having the same shape front and back, because then the fit is so off anyway since it's a dropped shoulder. But usually you do have different shape front and back on the sleeve cap. And just like a mental, like how to remember which one is which. It kind of mimics the front and back armhole as well. And if you imagine a back armhole, that is less curved compared to the front. So the back is wider. And that is because you want to be able to move your arms forward. Then, of course, the back width is a lot bigger compared to your front width. So the front is a little bit smaller, so you don't have too much fabric here in the front. But the back, of course, needs to be wider, so you can reach out your arms. And the sleeve cap mimics that. The curve is like straighter in the back, so it has a little bit of extra width at the bottom of the armhole of the sleeve cap, so you get that ease of movement. But in the front, you don't want to have too much fabric in the front armhole, bottom of the armhole. So that one is usually a little bit curved. We have a picture of this as well in our book Fit for Knit, so we definitely will post that. I have it here now. You can see if I can show you. There we go. Then here is like the fabric is the pattern is folded together, so as you can see, the back is less curved compared to the front.
Yeah, and I can definitely testify for that, and I agree with you, because I have sewn a few sewing patterns made for knits that has mirrored, so the back and front were identical, and I will say it didn't look as good, so I am not doing that myself, and a little bit wary of it. Again, of course it can work, and it makes easier. Then you can also have a half of a pattern piece, so it saves like space in that way, because you can cut the pattern piece on fold. But I have not had good experience, unfortunately, with those patterns, so I'm definitely with you. It's just, and it may, to the eye, the difference might be subtle, but when you sew it, you can tell, and when you wear it exactly. And that was one of the mistakes. I remember when I started to learn pattern making and drawing my own patterns, I did the mistake, as you say, that I made the back curve a little bit too deep, so it wasn't shallow enough, and exactly the thing. And that we was talking about moving, I was like moving from the back. I was like, it was constraining. It was awful, and that was like decades ago, and I didn't have the access to you and other people that are very knowledgeable about this. I was like, what is wrong? I thought it was maybe the sleeve that was wrong, but it was actually, as you say, it was the back armhole that was causing this particular issue. So yeah,
and this is a little bit like when you stand and look in the mirror. Yeah, there might be a little bit of excess fabric in the back armhole, especially close to the bicep. And of course, I mean, there is a fine line between like it's being too much and it becomes bulky. But there has to be a little bit extra fabric. Otherwise, you are not going to be able to move your arms forward. So don't overfit it. Like, you can't remove every single extra fabric, because then you remove the ease, like the movement of ease. It needs to be. It helps when you're moving and moving your arms, especially if you have a woven fabric that has no stretch to it. With jersey knit fabric, it's more forgiving since the fabric is of course stretchy, but still. It's gonna feel unbalanced. And also on the sleeve head, you can see that the center, if you like fold it in half and get like along the grain line, the middle line, the sleeve cap is usually a little bit more like forward leaning, because your shoulder are usually a little bit more forward on your body as well. So it mimics a little bit the body. And this also, it helps. Of course, here you can, depending a little bit how you look, you can move that as well, of course. We show that in the book. But usually the posture is like you have the shoulders a little bit more forward compared to back. So yeah, I do also always want to have difference. I want to differentiate the front and the back on the armhole, unless of course it's drop shoulder, then it's fine. Then it's another issue. It's not as close fitting, because then basically the armhole is moved away from your shoulder, so it doesn't need to mimic the body in the same way.
Yeah, that's very important, because that makes me think about that. Basically, a good message here is that don't overfit the sleeves and the sleeve area, because you're not supposed to stand at Madame Tussauds. You're not a wax figure, I think it's called. You're a moving person, and when you're wearing the garment, I mean, neither you or anyone else will see you standing with a straight back, super stiff. So just because everything lies nice and flat and there's no excess fabric in that particular posture, which is the one that we're probably standing in the mirror and looking and like, oh, there's a fold of fabric in the back. What did I do wrong? But as Malena says, that's for a reason, because you are supposed to move around in your clothes, and that's why we have to think about that as well. So it's not just how it looks standing still in the mirror, it's how you feels on your body, and that it works for your life and your reality, and what makes you feel free and comfortable. I think that's very, very important. So again, I think it's similar with the pants. There is always a tendency to start overfitting, and then you create some other issues as well, because we get a little bit too obsessive sometimes about, things.
Yeah, you might remove the ease of movement by accident, and then it might look nice when you're wearing it standing still, but as soon as you start to move around, like, there is nothing. I probably told you this story already before. Worst storyteller ever. I don't know if it's true, I don't know when, and I don't know who it was about. But let's say it was like the Princess of Monaco, Audrey Hepburn, Grace Kelly, someone, old Hollywood, old school, who wanted to have their gloves tailored, but remove all wrinkles. She didn't want to have any excess fabric. And they literally fitted her like a glove, perfect fit, but you couldn't bend her fingers. Because, obviously in leather, it was too stiff, like, no ease of movement. So, yeah, you can go overboard with the fitting. Don't quote me on that story. Again, I don't know even if it's true. But the moral, that we take with us. Don't remove all the ease of movement. Yes.
And it also gives the saying "fitted like a glove." It gives it like a second meaning here. No, of course, don't fact check us, but it's a very illustrated story and a good way to end this podcast. All right, so thank you so much for listening to us ramble about sleeves for almost an hour, like we always do. And of course, if you have any questions or things, because we can definitely see that we can do follow-ups episodes, and we always love getting listeners' questions as well. You can email us at stitchingtalespod@gmail.com, or you can go over to our socials, either on Instagram, stitchingtalespod, or our YouTube channel, stitchingtalespod. And of course, you can also check out our book Fit for Knits if you want to learn even more about how to fit and sew sleeves. All right. Thank you so much for listening. I am Johanna Lundström.
And I am Malena Hjerpe. Bye bye.
Bye bye.